Okay, so hi everyone. Just a minute ago I started a live video, but I had some issues with the screen and I was doing sound check. Please let's start over and see if you can see me and hear me, and please comment if you can hear me. I'll be checking here on the phone as I'm talking to you, but I'll be checking on my screen as well. Okay, Brother K is saying that it's perfect. I don't know about that, but thank you. As some of you noticed, I made a mistake before. I started the video in the wrong way and I've now restarted. So I'm just going to give people a few seconds to switch to this new video. And in a moment I'll be starting the section. Today is news in English. Anyone who's interested in a Danish version can watch the live video that we did yesterday. That was in Danish. Today will be all English. Just giving it one more minute. I'll be taking questions along the way, or at least towards the end. And I have a few questions that were prepared beforehand by Tim Hammond. So I'll be doing those as well. Yeah, it seems that everything is rolling. Let's just get back to the questions I have. There. Okay. So, my name is Lena Nyhus. I am the chair and founder of Intact Denmark. We're getting to be a fairly big organization by now. We have more than 700 members. Volunteers, every one of us. There isn't any paid staff. We were founded in 2013. An NGO, and we don't get government subsidies or anything like that. It's completely voluntary. What we're talking about now is what's happening with legislation in Denmark. There's been a citizens' initiative. What's happening with that? And we're making great progress, contrary to what some people might think. So today is all about good news. And times of adversity, but good news. That's the bottom line. So, I'll be starting. This is Lena Nyhus. You're watching Intact Denmark News in English, and the entire segment today will be in English. But for anyone who's interested in watching news in Danish, you can go onto our live channel and watch the segment that I did yesterday, which was entirely in Danish. Well, that's not quite true. There was a small segment in German, but other than that, it was Danish. What has happened in Denmark is that yesterday, on May 18th, there was a vote on the Intact Denmark Citizens Initiative to introduce an 18-year age limit for non-therapeutic genital alterations, such as circumcisions. And we did not make it. We lost the vote. So one should think that this was a wake, but it's not. We knew that chances were that we could definitely risk losing the vote, but we had a number of things that we wanted to achieve by putting forward this citizens' initiative and making the parliament deal with non-therapeutic circumcision. And we managed to achieve all that and even more. So this is a milestone, this is a celebration, And this is a time to put our heels in and push forward and work with all the achievements that has been reached so far. So let me just line up what's the situation politically in Denmark today. When we started Intact Denmark in 2013, a few people had been debating circumcision for a couple of years, and they really needed all the support from the public that they could possibly get. And a few of those people will be names that are familiar in the international intactivist environment. It's the medical doctor and adjunct professor of, clinical sexual epidemiology, who is Morten Frisch. And it was Leo Milgram, who is a young man who was involuntarily circumcised. He has Jewish background. There were a few others who debated circumcision at that time, but there wasn't a formal resistance to non-therapeutic genital alterations in Denmark. So we decided to make that resistance a reality. And by 2013, we formed Intact Denmark. By then, we had the support of approximately 62% of the population who wanted to see children protected from non-therapeutic circumcisions. So that was a major plus in the Danish culture. The Nordic Children's Ombudsman came out with the recommendation that non-therapeutic genital alterations such as circumcision be banned in 2014, I think. A number of children's rights and sexual rights organizations such as Sex and Society, which is a part of the Planned Parenthood umbrella, Save the Child, and a number of major Danish children's rights organizations as well. But at that time, there was only one political party that had a resolution to end non-therapeutic circumcision. And of course, Denmark is a multiple party system. And they weren't, they weren't very vocal about it, I can say that. So what we set out to do was to move the public even further along the way so that we would gain a major awareness about genital autonomy. We wanted to make sure that all the medical organizations gained an awareness about this, and we hope that they would adopt resolutions to promote genital autonomy and what we consider basic medical ethics. We wanted the political parties to adopt resolutions, and of course, ultimately, we wanted to see a minimum protection of 18 years introduced. And then we just went our merry way and did that. So the situation that we have now is that almost 90% of the population supports the introduction of protection of children below the age of 18. I don't think any other issue unites the population like that. We have 3 parties in the parliament who now support... no, that's not true, what I'm saying. We have 5 or 6 parties now in the parliament who now support the introduction of an age limit. And currently we have, I think, 12 parties in the parliament. The 2 major parties are against the introduction of an age limit at this point, but they don't have the majority within their parties. So it's the leadership in the parties who are who have tied the hands of their members. And the rest of the parties are either pro-legislation, or at least they've set their members free to vote by conscience. And the major achievement, apart from the population supporting this legislation, is that the entire Danish medical establishment now supports the abolishment of non-therapeutic genital alterations of children below the age of 18. The entire Danish medical establishment. So that is, that's huge. It's surgeons, it's anesthesiologists, it's pediatricians, urologists, nurses, physiotherapists, anyone you can think of, midwives. It's amazing, and it's an achievement that we're really, really proud of. And what happened was, one of the reasons, not all the reasons, but one of the reasons this has happened is that in 2018, we had exhausted almost all the political venues that we had at that point. We had been in contact with all the political parties. We had the support of the medical organizations and the children's rights organizations and the population. We had had delegations to different parliamentary committees on religious freedom, on children's rights, justice, all that sort of thing. But we couldn't really move the debate onto the parliament floor. That wasn't happening. What was happening was that a new possibility had opened itself, and that's called Citizens' Initiative. So it's it has the semblance of a petition. It needs 50,000 signatures from the population in order to be introduced in the parliament. And Denmark has a population of 5.7 million people, and I think somewhere around 3 million of us are eligible to vote. Of course, children and foreigners are not allowed to vote, but out of the Danish citizens, all adults are eligible to vote. So 50,000 of us have to support the Citizens' Initiative, and if that happens, they may be introduced to be debated on the parliament floor. And when I say maybe, it's because if they are in conflict with the Danish constitution, then they can't be introduced. So I have a small English pocket copy of the constitution here. And what's interesting in this context is that our Citizens' Initiative was challenged, and concerns were raised that that introducing an age limit for non-therapeutic circumcisions would be in conflict with religious freedom, as non-therapeutic circumcisions are primarily performed as rituals amongst Muslims and Christians and Jews in Denmark. So the public as such do not perform non-therapeutic circumcision. It doesn't happen. In Europe, the populations are almost intact unless they belong to a few minorities, such as circumcising Christian, Muslim and Jewish cultures. And the concern has actually been more for the Jewish culture, and that has to do with the Danish Jewish community being very vocal, and it has to do with international Jewish attention and also pressure from, amongst others, the US government. But let me just get to the Constitution here, because Article 67 of the Danish Constitution says, citizens shall be at liberty to form congregations for the worship of God in a manner which is in accordance with their convictions, provided. And everything that comes before the comma is of course interesting, but after the comma, provided, is what's really operative here. So, provided that nothing contrary to good morals or public order shall be taught or done. And good morals and public order is the penal code in Denmark. So it says in the Constitution, in black and white, that if we introduce a new article to the penal code that prohibits non-therapeutic circumcision of healthy children, well, then it will be in accordance with the Constitution. So that was one of the first things that happened. We were challenged on this issue of the Constitution. And the Justice Department and the Parliamentary Legal Office and an independent organization called, I forgot, the Danish Human Rights Institute. They all looked into this question, and the Justice Department and Legal Office, and of course also the Human Rights Institute, all made the judgment call that it will not be in conflict with neither the Danish Constitution nor with the international conventions that Denmark has promised to uphold if we introduce legislation. And it has to be a judgment call, because of course if this legislation is passed, it can be challenged in Danish courts and it can be challenged in international courts. And if they come to a different conclusion from the Justice Department and the Legal Office, then of course Denmark will have to adhere to that conclusion. But for all intents and purposes, they agree with us that it is possible to limit rituals as long as it's for the benefit of the child. So that was a major victory for us. And I don't think, to my knowledge at least, that any other country in Europe and perhaps even the world has come to a point where the Justice Department and other important bodies have passed a I'm saying judgment because I don't have a better word for it by now, but that they've come to the conclusion that it is possible to limit non-therapeutic circumcision, and that it will not be in contravention to the international I'm sorry. Well, you know what I mean. I'm talking about the Constitution and I'm talking about the international conventions. There it was. So that was a major victory for us. And what has also happened is that we did get a lot of support yesterday in the Parliament when the vote was passed. And that happened even though we know that the US government has taken issue with the Danish government on this subject quite a few times. And the US embassy even called Intact Denmark into a meeting and asked us, what would it take to make you withdraw your citizens' initiative? Which, quite frankly, pissed us off. We're not good with that sort of behavior. So we told them our citizens' initiative becomes irrelevant the minute we have an 18-year age limit for non-therapeutic circumcisions and other genital surgeries. And until that happens, we go on, and the US government will not be able to stop us. Secondly, we told them that anyone who had done their research would know that once a citizens' initiative has been published, it cannot be withdrawn, not even by us. We wouldn't even be able to change a comma if we wanted to. So we told them to simply back off. And thirdly, and you know, we had some choice words to say, the US government simply should not interfere in Danish internal matters, and they certainly should not try to bully a small NGO. Imagine what would happen if the Danish government were to go to a US NGO and try to prevent them from legislative initiatives within the US. There would be an outrage from the US government. But in Denmark, the politicians, some of them at least, simply responded with, oh, yes, well, we better take that into consideration. We've had a lot of publicity on this issue. We've had, I stopped counting at over 3,000 articles and television interviews and segments in 2018. And I simply don't know how much there has been in the past few years. But we do get almost daily at least 2 or 3 articles. There's TV segments all the time. This is primetime news, except from yesterday, because there were some more interesting news from Syria. So that one thing that happened yesterday didn't really get much attention. So that was everything, I think, up until now. And I'm seeing a lot of questions from you all and comments. I'll be running back through the questions in a few minutes. So what happens now? What we're doing now is that we are holding every single politician who voted yesterday responsible. And also quite a few of the politicians who didn't vote, but who belong to parties who took a stance against children's rights. There's an election coming up in Denmark, a local election, but with the same parties that we see in the national elections. So we will be confronting local politicians with this issue as well. Almost all the parties, I think except for 1 or 2 persons, not parties, declared that they are adamantly against non-therapeutic circumcision, and some of them even had some very, very harsh words to say, that they feel appalled at the idea of circumcising healthy children, and that they're very concerned with what it can do to a child physically and mentally to be circumcised. So we'll be asking them to fund us. I mean, they're saying that they want to prevent non-therapeutic circumcision, so they should put their money where their mouths are. We may be coming back with a second citizens initiative. We have a few other good ideas up our sleeves. So there's a lot to be done in the coming months and years. And it's important to remember that even if the vote had gone our way yesterday, and we had gotten the majority, there would still be a long way ahead. It wouldn't have been passed yesterday. That would have been a milestone, and then there would have been a long negotiation period in terms of how the final legislation should look, and then voting on the final legislation would be needed, and then of course it could be challenged in the courts. So whatever happens, or whatever happened yesterday, there's a long road ahead of us, but we are making wonderful progress. Oh, and I should tell you also, another thing that happened in this progress was that we got the politicians to demand that the National Health Board make a new brief on non-therapeutic circumcision and new recommendations as to how the circumcisions should be performed. And in that process, the National Health Board were so arrogant and that they weren't really listening to the medical organizations that they had invited to join. And in the writing of the guidelines, they had invited 6 medical organizations to join them: urologists, anesthesiologists, surgeons, midwives, home healthcare providers, and I'm forgetting a 6th organization. Well, I'm hoping you'll forgive that. But they ended up, all 6 organizations ended up withdrawing from the work on the guidelines because they felt that the National Health Board did not comply with their with the input that they were giving. For instance, the anesthesiologists are adamant that circumcisions of healthy children under the age of 18 are ethically wrong. They're potentially harmful and potentially dangerous, and that the only way to perform them to a minimum of medical ethical standards would be full anesthesia. So that means that the child would have to be at least 3 years old. And of course, that was something that the National Health Board would not comply with. So the anesthesiologists simply withdrew and said then they won't comply with, they won't participate in the guidelines. Similarly, surgeons were and urologists were concerned that circumcisions are performed on healthy children below the age of 18, and one of their recommendations was that at least it must be an experienced children's surgeon who performs them, and that was also a recommendation that the National Health Board wasn't pleased to comply with. One thing that they did, they complied with actually quite a few input that came from the medical organizations as well, just not enough. But one important thing that they have complied with is that now it is mandatory that medical doctors who perform circumcisions and other, for instance, rabbis who perform the circumcisions have to document that they have told parents that a number of complications may arise, including death. So they have to tell the parents, and they have to document that they have told the parents, if you choose to circumcise your child, your healthy child, you have to understand that there is a small but existing chance that your child might die from this. So this is a really important progress. And also it says that emergency equipment must be available in the clinics. such as emergency equipment to deal with resuscitation, heart failure and that sort of thing. So this is major progress. And of course, some of the things that have been achieved before that is we now have some very, very good documentation, because we have very strict rules in place now, which were introduced in 2014 and 2016, as far as I recall, on how the doctors should document complications and circumcisions. So we do by now have, I think, the world's strongest rules concerning non-therapeutic circumcision and concerning the documentation of non-therapeutic circumcision. So, major progress. Now, what I'll do now is I'll take a few questions that Tim Hammond has been so kind to send me in advance, and then I'll go through your list of questions and see if, I can't answer all of it, I think, but I'll do my very best to answer everything that I can. But let me first get to some of Tim Hammond's excellent questions. And if some of you don't know Tim Hammond, I would say Google him. He's someone to know if you're an intactivist. Tim Hammond, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so Tim asks, yesterday in the vote on the Citizens' Initiative, did the Citizens' Initiative appear to get more support from the left, the middle, or the right of the political spectrum? And first I have to explain to you that practically every single party in Denmark is to the left of the spectrum if we compare to American politics. We really don't have the same spectrum of politics as you do in the US. But given that consideration, the majority of the support that we got was from the left of the Danish political spectrum. So it was from, for instance, the Red-Green Alliance. Yes, but what I have to say is that actually we do have that there's tension in every single party, and if every party set their members free to vote by conscience, we would have approximately 80% support in every single party. So from left to right on the Danish spectrum, there would be support, just as in the public, from at least 80% of the politicians. Maybe not to the specific wording that we have suggested, but support for the end of non-therapeutic circumcision of children and for the introduction of genital autonomy for all individuals. So I think that's a very, very important takeaway from this, that we cover the entire political spectrum. Did any legislators give us good advice on how to move forward from this point? And I would say the best advice we've gotten, except for someone telling me to get a hold of my resting bitch face, the best advice that we've gotten is keep on doing what you're doing in Tact Denmark, because you're doing great work. And I think, I'm not going to get tired of being told just that anytime soon. But we've heard that from a number of people, also in the media, that we're doing good work, that we are we're taken seriously, and I think, we were actually recently invited to join the Danish Human Rights Council, and I think that shows just how seriously we're taken and how proud we can be of the work we've done so far. So that's something we're looking forward to digging into. It's a really, really interesting task. Tim also asks whether CRIN or any other national or international human rights organization publicly supported Intact Denmark's Citizens Initiative, and they haven't. None of them have supported the Citizens Initiative as such. I don't think actually that's entirely true. I think Save the Children actually did issue support in 2018, because a lot of them have supported the introduction of an age limit. That also goes for Sex and Society, which is part of the Planned Parenthood umbrella. The Children's Rights Organization, but whether they have supported the actual wording in our Citizens Initiative, I simply can't remember right now. And also Tim asks whether I think it would have been helpful if there had been an international Jewish alliance to speak out for the introduction of an age limit, to balance some of the more orthodox conservative Jewish voices and international lobbyist organizations, also Benjamin Netanyahu, who have spoken out against our Citizens Initiative. And of course that would have been helpful. It would have been great if there had been a Jewish and also a Muslim alliance to challenge this idea that all Jews are pro-circumcision, because they're not. We have Jewish founders and Jewish members of Intact Denmark, just as we have Muslim founders and Muslim members, and just as we have people from Christian communities who are involuntarily circumcised, who were amongst our founders and current members. So it would be very helpful. Yes, indeed. Yeah, I have to say, just before I move on to the questions here on this list, that some people may find it a little bit daunting to be opposed by the Trump administration, by the Obama administration, by the Netanyahu administration, and also by the Danish prime ministers. For instance, the current Danish prime minister went public with an appeal to stop our Citizens Initiative, and invoking ideas that the greatest challenge to Judaism in Denmark would be the introduction of an 18-year age limit to non-therapeutic circumcision, which is why she opposes the Citizens Initiative. And I do think it's very, very important to have minority concerns and to be supportive and caring of our minorities, both in Denmark and in the rest of the world. However, that does not excuse violating people's genital autonomy. But while all that is said, getting opposition from Obama, from Trump, from Netanyahu and Danish prime ministers such as Mette Frederiksen and the previous Lars Løkke, that really doesn't scare us off. On the contrary, that shows us just how strong we are. We're a small organization. We started out with just 25 members, and now we're big enough, we're strong enough, we're dedicated enough, and we're professional enough to force the Danish Prime Minister to get on the screen and try to challenge us. We are not going anywhere. We are creating this change in the world, in Denmark. In the future, we will not see non-therapeutic circumcision of children happening. So all the state leaders that I just mentioned will simply have to find themselves on the wrong side of history, because they were not championing the rights of children. And children are the most vulnerable, defenseless human beings, group of human beings that we have in our societies, in our communities. If we do not protect and support the rights of children, what are we as communities? So this is a challenge. It isn't. It shouldn't be shameful for them to grow wiser to children's rights and to human rights, and we're hoping that they will rise to the task. And now I shall go through all of your questions. Well, you know, I'll just do it here. No, I shall have to do it here then. Let me see. Oh, there are so many familiar names and so many people I don't know. I'll be looking forward to going through this list. Oh, this is an interesting question from Danielle. Thank you for your compliments, Danielle. You're saying, please tell us about the materials you use to educate both public and politicians. Were any Intactivist writings read aloud in Parliament or required reading for members? Were any videos or films shown? And if so, which ones? And I'll have to say, it has been very, very difficult to educate the Parliament, because they're very busy, and quite a few of them haven't really found it necessary to read up on the materials that we were sending them. We did do long and extensive reports which really explained the legal issues in depth. We did do some very, very short and handy, 10 facts sheets, and that wasn't really responded to. But what was more interesting, I think, was that before we did all that, we went to the media. And in the beginning, in 2013, when we approached the media, it was very, very difficult to get the media to take any interest in this issue of circumcision. But we kept on pushing for it. We kept calling journalists, writing them, complimenting other things that they were writing on health issues, on sexual rights, on bodily integrity, on consent, on human rights, and each time we introduced the idea of following up with stories about circumcision, and eventually the media started taking an interest in that issue, and then we've used social media, especially Facebook. We have been anytime we could find anything on circumcision or children's rights or anything, we have been trying with a kind and respectful and factual information. So simple questions. Why do you feel that the foreskins should be cut off? Do you understand the functions of the foreskin? All that. We've taken a lot of inspiration from great international intactivists, Marilyn Milos, Rosemary Romberg, of course, who's not with us anymore, Stephen Svoboda, Anthony Lempert, Jack Whitten has some really interesting approaches. Bloodstained Men. There's a lot of people who are doing a lot of good, and also we've also looked to organizations and said some of these methods we don't find will be relevant in a Danish or a European context. And of course, one of the organizations that that we took an interest in after we formed Intact Denmark was Bloodstained Men and Brother K, as I mentioned before. And I've told Brother K that while Bloodstained Men may have methods that are very valid and effective in the US, we don't feel that the methods that Bloodstained Men use would be valid in a Danish, Scandinavian, or even European context. So we've used more I think a softer branch of intactivism than the one we see elsewhere. Also, I think it's important to understand that intactivism is a minority issue in Denmark, in Scandinavia, and in Europe, and that means that it can feel as though there's bashing of minorities, Muslims, Jews, circumcising Christian cultures. And we're not interested in bashing minorities. We're not interested in bashing parents. We're interested in informing parents. We understand that when parents circumcise, they circumcise because it's what they know. It's what they've been culturally shaped to do. It's even though it's not a loving act, it comes from a place of concern on the parents' behalf. They are not circumcising out of evil intent. On the contrary, so we've been trying to be as respectful in our approach as possible. When that is said, I know that a lot of people from minority cultures, circumcising cultures in Denmark, in Scandinavia, and in Europe don't feel that the question that the fact that we have questioned circumcision is kind or respectful or helpful at all. They feel that the simple fact that we bring up the question of circumcision in itself becomes bashing. So that, I think that's a balance that's very difficult to get right, but we are attempting to do that, and we are attempting to embrace the parents. And I think the fact that we do have quite a few parents by now who are regret parents in our organization and who started out being pro-circumcision when they came in contact with us, I think that proves that we're lifting that part of our the task we've taken on quite well. But we'll be interested in exchanging experiences in the international networks in the coming months and years. Yeah, Brother K, that's a very nice comment, that Denmark is positioned ethically and ideologically to be the first nation in the world to protect all children from genital mutilation. And you're right, it won't be easy or quick, but the trajectory of history is toward freedom. I'm not sure that Denmark will be the first. I think it's very possible, but a number of other countries are doing great work. Interesting things are happening in Iceland, Finland, Sweden, Norway. I see some of the Central European countries also have interesting things happening. So I think this, there's a major movement, probably primarily in Europe, not just continental Europe, but in the UK as well. But there is a major movement towards taking children's rights more seriously. And it's very possible that Denmark will be the first country, but actually I'm hoping that someone will, you know, overtake us and surprise us tomorrow with new legislation. That would be wonderful. I wouldn't mind being number 2 on an issue as important as this. David Balashinsky, I can see your comment, but for some... Okay, I was thinking I couldn't see all of it, but now I can. You're asking, you're saying the US government's attempt to pressure Denmark to withdraw the bill concurred most recently. It happened during the Trump administration, and you're asking whether the Biden administration has remained neutral or whether it has also tried to exert pressure on Denmark. And that's a great question, but we actually don't know. What we do know is that the Trump administration and the Obama administration has been trying to exert pressure on Denmark on this issue. And the Biden administration has just been in Denmark for 3 days, Sunday, Monday and Tuesday. No, Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday. So he's probably still here. Foreign Secretary Blinken, I believe. I would expect that it has been addressed shortly, this issue, but we don't have any documentation on that yet. We do have documentation on the on some of the ongoings with the Trump administration, so that's quite interesting. Yeah, and Danielle, you asked about if I would please outline what was said by the U.S. government in who contacted whom, and I did go through it shortly beforehand. There has been a number of contacts between the U.S. government and the Danish government over quite a few years on the issue of circumcision. But when it came to Intact Denmark, they called me. The US Embassy called me. They asked that Intact Denmark come to a meeting immediately, within the next few days. We said no. That was in 2018. We didn't have the time. We would talk to them, just not at the time they suggested. So we agreed to meet up a couple of weeks later at our convenience. And we don't know that they tried to bribe us. What they said was, what would it take to make you withdraw your citizens' initiative? We should have asked, and I regret that we didn't ask, what are you offering? But we didn't. We simply said there's no way we would change a thing about what we're doing. So no actual bribe was offered, no specific threat was worded, but they have at that sit down and on previous occasions confirmed that the US would be willing to sanction Denmark if legislation is passed regarding non-therapeutic circumcision. So I can't get closer to answering your question than that. Let me see, what other questions do we have? Brother Kay, you're saying in the United States, we say of politicians at election time, throw the bums out. That would not be my wording. What we're saying is if the current politicians are not willing to stand up for the rights of the children, we will elect other politicians. And at one point I did threaten to burn the chair of the former Prime Minister. And by that time, he felt that our conversation was over and he left. I have to say, it wasn't I'm not threatening anyone with violence or anything. It was a manner of expression that I was telling him that if he would not stand for the rights of children, we would do our best to make sure that he wasn't re-elected. And in fact, he was re-elected, but he and his party did not get enough votes to for him to remain as prime minister. That was probably not at all anything to do with Intact Denmark, but I was pleased nonetheless. Yeah, Tim Hammond is saying that the Obama administration also expressed concerns about the issue of circumcision during the German circumcision controversy in 2012. So, as you're saying, you don't believe it's a partisan issue. And I agree. In Denmark, it's certainly not a partisan issue. And judging by the experience we have with the Trump and Obama administrations, so far it hasn't been a partisan issue on behalf of the US either. Yes, David, you're asking, is a tally published on who voted what in the parliament? And yes, a tally has been published. And right now I don't remember the numbers, but we know exactly who voted what, and that it's published on the Parliament's Facebook page. So this is easy information to access. For everyone watching, I would say there are some interesting links and comments made, so I would suggest that you scroll through them. I can't get to all of them. But I would definitely suggest that you go through the comments, all of you. Yeah, this is also a very interesting question from Danielle again. In naming only non-therapeutic under the age of 18 illegal, how does your initiative provide future protection from unethical physicians calling their surgeries therapeutic? We have this problem in the US, often as the phony phimosis diagnosis. Most insurance covers therapeutic circumcision, so unethical physicians merely say that it was medically necessary and are not questioned about these false diagnoses. Denmark has one of the best diagnosis and treatment systems in the world, and one of the reasons for that is that we have national health care. So there's no reasons for doctors to make so far there has been no reasons for doctors to make any false claims regarding circumcision. So that means that if a registered doctor, a medical doctor, suddenly if there's suddenly a peak in circumcisions performed by these doctors, that would be very, very suspicious and very, very easy to notice in public databases. So let's say legislation was introduced tomorrow, then we would have a date, I'm tempted to say a cut date for circumcisions, where we would use the following months and years to check whether any medical doctors would suddenly register more necessary therapeutic circumcisions than previously. And since it's already a requirement that they document the circumcisions quite extensively, it would be very, very difficult for them to falsify their records and to circumcise healthy children without cause. And that's one of the reasons why we have taken the steps to make sure that registration, databases, understanding of complications and diagnosis, that all of that was established first. We wanted to make absolutely sure, or at least try to prevent legal situations such as the ones in Germany and Norway, which I'm sure you're all aware of, which has in Germany legalized circumcisions, and in Norway legalized circumcisions and introduced them to public hospitals on the free healthcare scheme. We've been trying to prevent that, and so far I can't say that for sure that nothing unexpected could happen, but so far that means that the circumcisions have not been reintroduced to public hospitals. They don't happen at public hospitals in Denmark and haven't happened in public hospitals since 2002. And that also means that we do have this excellent body of documentation. And therefore, if you look at circumcision research, and quite a bit of circumcision research has been done in Denmark, when you look at that, this is very, very strong research, and among some of the best studies in the world, because we have excellent data available in Denmark and in Scandinavia. So I would really urge you to familiarize yourselves with the studies on circumcision that are available in Denmark. On circumcision and on the frequency of phimosis in the Scandinavian or Danish population. Yeah, I would urge you all to read Victor's comment about the legislative process in Germany. This is really interesting. There's a lot to learn from the German situation. I think that is all for the questions. Yeah, thank you for all your nice comments. It's so lovely, thank you. Carter is asking to donate to Intact Denmark. Thank you, Carter. We do have the possibility to donate to Intact Denmark, and I'd ask you to contact our treasurer Jeppe. We can receive payment in international cards and in PayPal. But I can't remember the exact details now. So I'd like to make that information available afterwards. But thank you for volunteering support. It really matters to us that we get money to work with, because as you all know, it's not even though we're doing all the work for free, there are expenses to voluntary work. So thank you so much for that. And Tim, you're saying Denmark is to children's genital autonomy movement what the Netherlands was to marriage equality movement. And I have to say, Denmark is to the children's genital autonomy movement what Denmark was to the marriage equality movement, because Denmark was the first country in the world to introduce marriage equality in civil marriages. We only just recently introduced marriage equality in terms of religious ceremonies, but for civil marriages, partnerships, that was Denmark, which was the first country, which was also the reason why the US ambassador to Denmark chose to marry his husband at the Danish Copenhagen City Hall when he was the US ambassador to Denmark. So that was a big event. And he had the reception at the City Hall. Yes, Dorte makes a very interesting comment, and that's Dorte der Grasser Trie. And Dorte is important for everyone from the international community watching, because Dorte is our international liaison officer. So if you want to network with Intact Denmark, please contact Dorte. She's the woman in the know. And she says that prior to the previous general election in Denmark, we contacted all the politicians. We also do that at local elections, every single one of them, and ask them whether they are pro or con an 18-year age limit. And then we share that information via social media and our webpage, so that we actually move mandates in that way. And we have previously been approached by politicians who have asked us not to be too harsh on them on the issue of circumcision, because they've been concerned that they wouldn't be elected if they hadn't come out in favor of our issue. And we've said, of course, we will immediately stop hitting on you on the issue of genital autonomy if you come out in favor of legislating on this issue. Other than that, you will simply have to be confronted with this question again and again until you get behind children's rights. This is not, it really isn't rocket science. The question is, should you or shouldn't you take scalpels to children's genitals, children's healthy genitals? And it should be a quite easy question to answer. And as Dorte is saying, some of the members of the parliament are having a tough time explaining and justifying by now that they actually promised to stand for children's rights before they were elected, and now they are, some of them have voted against children's rights. So we're using that to confront them. This is we're always working with long-term strategies. What will we be able to work with 2 years, 5 years, 10 years from now? So we're documenting, we're asking questions, and we're holding the politicians up to what they've said. Yeah. Jeff is saying we have to struggle to scrape up money to put up billboards, and the cutters act as though they are the tormented ones, even though they have national governments at their back. And that's true. The entire genital autonomy movement around the world, and that goes for FGM, MGM, IGM, the entire industry of genital mutilation is a very wealthy one and is a very established one, and we're all struggling to make ends meet financially. But But I think we're very creative and hardworking. So all around the world, great initiatives are being made. Now let me just check here. Yeah, so we've reached the end. I think I will just do 2 more questions. There's one from Carsten Ries, and then there's probably another one. And then I'll let that be enough for today. But if you have any specific questions, anything you feel that we should address sometime soon, I'm willing to do another live event at a later stage. Carsten is saying that oh yes, you're saying that the debate in the Danish Parliament is without visual effects, and members in the Parliament are required to use words and speak their case. That is true on the Parliament floor, but that's not necessarily true in the committees, and we have had delegations in the committees as well. We've also had delegations. Some of the parties have allowed us to have short delegations to meet with the party groups, and of course sometimes we also meet with the grassroots members and the local members in the Parliament. So sometimes we have had the chance to show pictures or to draw on whiteboards. On a few occasions we've actually had Parliament members becoming very uncomfortable and have had to interrupt meetings. We've also had the chance to have some of our members who are medical professionals, professors and the like with us, and to visit with the Parliament as expertise. So it has been a very complex and diverse process, but I have to say that in general I am very, very disillusioned and displeased with the research that the Parliament members as individuals and as parties have done. We've seen ill-informed members ask questions that the Justice Department have answered and dismissed years ago. I did have to recently at a meeting with a party where I probably won't ever be invited again. One actually leader of a party made a statement as to whether our citizens' initiative would mean that it would be possible to reintroduce FGM. And I told him that this question was, it was ridiculous to ask, and he was poorly informed, and he took offense. And then I was able to tell him that, listen, this question was answered by the Ministry of Justice, and it was signed by you because you were the Minister of Justice at the time. So I would have to ask you to consult your own notes on this issue. And that has been frustrating to me, to see that Parliament members who are making decisions on people's rights to keep their own body parts, that they don't even feel they have to do their research properly. But that has just been the level of professionalism that we've been up against. And I am now going to, I should have just ended after that question, because Tim, you're going to get the last word here. Tim is asking, question in hindsight, what would it have taken the US government to support the Citizens Initiative. I have to say I have no, I have no idea how to answer that, Tim. I'm going to have to let it end there and say that that's I think that's a theme for an entire symposium, but that would be very, very, very interesting to examine closer. So thank you all for watching. Thank you for your support, for your excellent questions, for all the comments I didn't get to address further. It's a wonderful community we have, and please all read through the comments. There are some excellent remarks. There are nuances to what I said. There are links. There are a number of interesting remarks that we can all learn from, and I'll try to do my very best to read through them all and to memorize everything. And I do apologize very much if I've made any mistakes, and I hope you'll forgive me, and I hope you will address them in the comments if that has happened. And one more time, Tim, thank you for making me end on a question I have no idea how to answer. So thank you all for joining us today, and good night.